Now, good evening. It's Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. It's 7:02 p.m. This is the WORT Board of Directors meeting, and I'm calling the meeting to order. Welcome. I sent links to the agenda over the weekend, so everybody should have had a chance to look at the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, we will consider them approved. The May 22nd draft minutes were in the Google Drive and linked on our agenda. No, they weren't linked on our agenda. Sorry about that, my mistake. I don't know if anybody has any corrections to the May minutes. If so, speak now or forever hold your peace. Hearing none, we will consider the May 22nd, 2022 draft minutes approved. I received no communications from the public. We have communications from the staff in form of the board reports. So we'll go to those later. I don't recall any executive committee meeting actions since the last meeting. So I think I wrote no there and I didn't see anything to, so. I put a draft agenda for the annual meeting. Doug made one correction to that. You all are welcome to look at that. It's linked in today's agenda. The annual meeting agenda is pretty standard, so I don't see, we don't have any bylaw changes, so it's a pretty routine meeting. We're going to hear soon about our financial audit, so
excuse me, Dave. Excuse me, this is Marla. Yeah.
Hi, Marla.
Hi. Does the draft agenda that you just showed for the annual meeting include Dean's suggestions for the candidates speaking? Or
no,
not?
No, it doesn't include that right now. I will add that to that agenda. Good point.
I don't think it needs to be on the agenda.
I just think
the procedural matter more than the agenda items that the candidates will have a chance to speak, and that's good enough. And then how we do that is kind of up to us.
Yeah. Well, the agenda currently says that we're doing it in alphabetical order, Dean. That's why I thought we should probably look at it one more time.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, we
just want to make sure your ideas were caught because they were good.
Yeah, I think so too. So, okay, good. I will make a mental note to do that. Also linked on the agenda was the audited financial statement and the audit letter from Wegner, and you've all had a chance to look at those. And I will now pass it off to our wonderful friend Wegner CPAs.
Thanks, Dave. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight. I am going to kind of walk through some high-level elements of the audit results and the audit report, answer any questions you might have. My name is Hannah Lunzer, and I am one of the audit managers at Wegner CPAs. And Bruce Meyer is the audit partner on this account, as well as our team that was involved during the audit process itself. So thank you certainly to all the WORT staff who helped make this successful. Doug and Dave were very helpful during the year. It went really well. We did it remotely again. And so that makes a big difference, and Mary Joy for certainly getting the books in order for us. So that was great. There's been improvement with each year. So the overall audit results here, unmodified opinion, which is essentially a clean opinion. We don't have any audit entries, anything that came up as a result of our audit procedures that was large enough for us to report. We always work together to kind of talk through certain areas, but no audit entries of that kind. We're not aware of any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies over internal controls, which is awesome. We look through the control processes and have had some recommendations in the past, which have been addressed. And so we were able to see evidence of that occurring and seeing all the approvals and documentation of the controls happening. So good job on that front. There was no accounting standards also updated or implemented this year in 21. Next year, there will be 2 standards that go into effect, the lease standard and the in-kind standard. And for both of these, honestly, I don't think it'll be a major impact to your financials. Essentially, if you have any operating leases or contracts that have been just typically expensed each year, they will need to be showing up on the balance sheet as an asset and an offsetting liability. Since you own your station, a lot of your equipment and things like that, it's not a contract, it's not a lease, so shouldn't have too much of an impact. And then the in-kind standard essentially is just if you get a lot of materials and services that are donated to you, you have to explain in the footnotes how those are valued and how those are used. So again, not a huge impact, which is good. The actual financial bottom line this year was a net income of 83,000. And that is a little bit lower from last year. But again, we can kind of look at that as I go through some of the financial items here. Total assets increased though from the prior year. And again, if you have a net income, that's typically what we see is the assets increase. The liabilities did decrease a little bit as well. And I'll kind of pull up the balance sheet here for us to look at. Cash is your main asset, as well as your property and equipment. And then you have some accrued payroll related expenses. And I would say that if we boil your balance sheet down to those couple items, that would make up most of it. So not a huge change, just more cash available. And then your actual income statement here last year, there was a PPP loan that was accounted for in 2020's revenue. So that's kind of helping again, the bottom line in 2020, maybe, which is partially why it's a little bit higher last year than this year. But lots of CPP grant money this year, and certainly a strong.
Hannah, can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
Just to point out to the board, the income is lower in 2022 than 2021, but because of the PPP loan, that was a one-time event, and that boosted us in 2020. We're not in bad shape, even though it shows a decrease in income, and that's what Hannah said. I'm trying to reassure everybody that even though it looks like, holy cow, there's a big drop. Well, there is, because there was a big boost.
Right. Yeah, if we had 2019 on here, it would be a little bit more comparative to 2021. But even still, CPB also had additional funds for COVID relief that, I don't know that will continue either. So 2022 is probably more in line with where a normal quote unquote year would be. But that was kind of the benefit of some of these COVID relief awards, was to help in these years where it was a little bit unknown as to how things would go. But your overall change here is what I was pointing out before, 83,000 for the net income, and last year was 200. If we pull out 99 of that being PPP, it's not too much different from this year.
Oh, yeah.
So if it is apples to apples, but it feels a little bit like apples to oranges. So.
Does that explain the big difference in the cash flow on page 7?
Yeah.
Go to page
Yes.
7.
The cash flow statement?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's on page 9 on yours. I thought it was on page 7. But does what we were just talking about explain these huge differences?
Yes, because
Okay.
the biggest change, the biggest effect is this top line here, which is your net income. The rest of this middle section isn't too different year to year. But if you've got a lot more net income, you just have more cash. And that PPP loan was $100,000 cash influx to your bank account. So that was very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
But still a positive cash provided by operating activities, even in 2021, which is good. That's where we want to see a positive number. Certainly, that means that your operations themselves are generating cash, which is good. Yes, we've got a nice influx there. And then we like to look at, your net assets as, net assets with restriction as opposed to net assets without restriction. And so this year, your liquid net assets are essentially 635,000, which increased from last year. Again, if there is a net income, it still does increase your position, your equity position overall. And that's about 9 months worth of total expenses. So if you take that and divide by 12, that's kind of where that sits, and which was actually very similar to 2020. So that is good, even though, you had more expenses in 2021. As you can see here, total expenses of 839,000 and 2020 had 731. Even though those numbers increased, you were still able to proportionally increase your revenue enough to keep it at the same place. Now, if it was decreasing, if your liquid net assets was decreasing, that would be the problem. If your expenses are increasing and your revenue is not, that's the challenge. So, but I mean, this is a good, WORT's in a good position here. I mean, I've definitely given presentations in the past where it was not in this strong of a financial position. So I think it's been this way for a couple of years now, which is great to see. So I don't want to forget that, now this is almost normal and status quo, but it's taken a lot of effort and a lot of fundraising and a lot of expense management to get here. So it's paying off. If we look at just kind of some of the functional expenses categories here, these are the last couple years, last 3 years. We have to look at it in terms of these buckets, so to speak. Your program services number is 57,000. And then this is your admin cost, 15, fundraising about 9. And then the station has a unique element of this underwriting and grant solicitation because of CPB. And unlike other nonprofits, they don't have this category. So it is pulling away from some of your program services, but it actually is really important part of running a station. So typically, if I would say that it's best to compare yourself to other types of organizations, so other, radio stations, as opposed to just standard, maybe not radio station nonprofits, for lack of a better word. So it's been fairly consistent the last couple of years. The functional expense methodologies have not changed, and it's based off of how people spend their time or directly being allocated to one of the other categories. So some of these we have mentioned just in conversation. Positive cash flow here of 95,000, and that PPP loan was forgiven in June this year, 2021, I should say. It's already June 2022. Last year, June. And then there is a footnote that we had to include for the current litigation matter regarding some of the volunteers. So that is still undetermined, and so therefore we needed to include it. That is kind of the high level results. I think that overall it's certainly a strong year coming out of COVID without the PPP funding, but with some additional CPB grants. And now it's kind of, we're in new territory in 2022, and we'll see what happens then. But is there any other questions that you have for me or anything?
Yeah.
Yes,
I have a question on page 11, the bottom of page 11, we're talking about the value of the volunteer services. It says, not reflected in the statements as it does not meet the criteria for recognition. What is the criteria for recognition, and would it matter? Would it be a good thing for us if this was reflected?
Yes, the accounting standards have a very specific definition of what is quantifiable. Right here is that it either has to create or enhance non-financial assets, meaning either it's like volunteers to help build an asset or building campaign, or like they're painting, or they're doing some sort of building related item, an asset related item, or in your case, the volunteers that are at the station need to meet three things. It needs to be a professional skill, meaning a certification or something where you maybe have to get some education or training for. That person has to have those skills, and then you would have to otherwise purchase it if you didn't get it for free. So those are the three criteria, and those, unfortunately, the time that people spend at the station does not qualify as a professional skill, so it does not meet the criteria. But it doesn't mean that, it's not valuable. That's why it's included in the footnotes. It's just not quantified.
Okay, thank you.
So typically it's like legal or accounting or medical, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Hannah, that's something that I'd like to talk to you offline about for future audits, because if we were a normal radio station and we paid our on-air staff, then the volunteer work is providing a service that we would ordinarily have to pay for. So.
Right. Yeah, that it has to meet all three criteria.
Oh,
And
okay.
they're not, there's no certification, there's no professionalism. So even if, I don't think that would be the case, Dave.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it would qualify, even
Unfortunately,
though
I think you're right.
it's valuable. It's just not a professional skill by the GAP standards.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's a good question, though.
93,000 hours. Oof.
Right. Definitely worth putting in the footnotes, because
Yeah.
that is, people will know that if you didn't have this, that's a lot of money. So that you'd have to come up with. So your volunteers are certainly very valuable.
So does our tower space lease have to be treated differently next year?
It might. We might have some lingering pieces there because it goes into 2024. It's right at the edge, and so we do take materiality into consideration, and it has to be more than 1 year. So you'll be more than 1 year by 1 month, whether that is material or not. But I guess it also depends on if it gets renewed as well. So
okay,
it's definitely a contract that we will evaluate. Whether it actually meets the criteria or not is to be determined.
thank you.
I think the motion is to accept the audit. Is that correct? And accept the letter?
Yes.
I don't think we have to accept it.
Yes, we do. We don't approve it, we accept it.
Hannah, is there a motion that we should be making here to accept it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not aware of anything that you have to do.
Well, I guess you can do it either ways, but you don't approve an audit. A board can move to accept it, and just as a formality.
Yeah, so I would move that.
And I'll second.
So Stu moved and Dean seconded that we accept the audit. All in favor, say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries.
I just want to say, my research has been in 1994 this week, and the sea change of the station's fortunes and the station's just everything is remarkable. There were periods where if you told somebody in 1994 that we'd be getting an audit like this, they would be disbelieving. So this is good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's not any one factor. It's a effort of the whole team that makes this possible. Because one person could do one good thing, but that doesn't do the breadth of positive things that keep happening at this station. So it's nice to be associated with it. So,
Mhm.
well, thank you very much, Hannah.
Yeah.
Are there any other
You're
questions
welcome.
for Hannah?
Say hi to Dale Coonan for me.
I will. Yeah. Well, we certainly
Bush, we
appreciate
missed
the
him.
relationship, and we are happy to provide this service. So,
Yes, it's been great working with you.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, stay safe, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Doug.
Bye. Great to work with you, Hannah, as always.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
And not speaking metaphorically, but the storm has passed. At least it has passed on the west side. I don't know what's happening on the east side.
Pretty
but-
clear over here too.
Okay.
I just did a little math, 93,000 hours.
Mhm.
It is 387 days, so it's over a year of volunteer.
Wow.
Well, 'cause-
Maybe Susan can do that somehow in some like a little fundraising.
yeah, no,
data.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, it's 365 days a year of broadcasting we do. So,
yeah, we do more than a year
Um,
of broadcasting in a year.
when you consider all the people who make it happen, yeah, it's great. Moving on. I did a terrible thing, and I didn't include the link to the financial statements or credit union balances. The finance committee did not get a chance to meet before the meeting, so I have nothing to report from the finance committee. But things are good. The bank accounts are continuing to stay stable or increase, so we're all doing good. The first report that has an action item is the Technology and Facilities Director report from Tom. And Tom and Susan both mentioned in their report a request for $350 for the National Federation of Community Broadcasters, or NFCB. And they think that this is going to be the last year that the attendance will be virtual rather than in person. So we can have a bunch of staff members attend virtually for very little cost compared to having to fly them down to some location or other. So
Move approval.
Stu's moved to approve.
Second,
Dean seconded. Is there any discussion?
Muy interesting that I can have a conversation about it. That's my opinion. If I wasn't there, I don't know.
Hello, Marla. Are you there? I think we've lost Marla. So, hearing no discussion about the $350 expenditure for the NFCB, all in favor say aye or raise their hands.
aye.
Aye.
All in favor, all opposed, say no. Are there any?
Yeah, I think I
Yeah,
should abstain
Doug.
from this one because it directly affects me as a staff member.
Yep.
Yeah, you should have.
So one abstention from
Doug
Doug.
has an abstention.
Yep, understood. The motion carries. Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask
Go ahead.
Doug, or I see we've also got Sybil and Susan on the call. If they could comment on Tom's comment about he needs to get a locking mechanism quote on the refurbished ThinkPad to keep it from walking away, considering the way things have gone missing around here lately. Can you elaborate on that? Can one of the three staff members on this call elaborate on that?
I can. we've been missing like a variety of small items, including like all of the sugar from downstairs, the automatic hand soap dispensers out of the bathrooms. I can't think of anything else
$60.
specifically. I mean, at this point, to my knowledge, it hasn't been personal items. There was a missing travel mug, but it was found. I lost a pair of eyeglasses, but I could have lost them at home just as easily. I have no idea where they are. So I'm not really including that, but there have been like odd things gone missing.
And when
And I
we
don't know
said,
of anything recently. This was a couple weeks ago, and I don't know if other staff knows of other things that could speak to it.
Go ahead, Susan.
well,
Susan had some packages, but I think it was a year ago, wasn't it?
no, I'm thinking of the $60 that was missing out of right after we let people
That's
back
money.
in. $60 was taken out of the honor system snack box that we had. Let's see. The weird thing when Doug says sugar, we're talking about over 6 pounds of sugar in individual 1 pound containers. And then the stuff with the automatic hand sanitizer, it was 3 of them being taken at once, and one overnight. Well, not overnight, we don't know when it's happening, but from one day to the next day, both bathroom sanitizers and the one down in the where the sink is downstairs, all of those were gone.
I mean, taken off the walls?
They're little, they
they're
sit on the sink,
Okay.
Yeah.
and you pass your hand under it and it
Yeah.
squirts out the liquid, and we're just kind of stuck. It's such an odd assortment of things, but you know, it's not like we're imagining those things. That's, you know, we know it's happening. We just
Okay, well, let's look for a germophobic who is not diabetic.
or is diabetic at this point.
Staff did put out a notice about it in the last volunteer newsletter when we noticed it was happening. Since then, we haven't really noticed anything further. So maybe someone knows we're watching now.
And I'll do my periodic push to change the door lock system so that every person has their own ID and it logs who's in the station whenever they're at the station. Because right now we don't know if somebody comes in a night that they're not scheduled to be programmed. You know, anybody who knows the code to the station can come in overnight or over the weekend. They don't have to be scheduled for that night. So,
Well, the
but
one
if there
thing
was
is
a
that we can take a quick look through the video, you know,
yeah,
the
yeah.
back and the front. So if we're noticing these things right away, but there wasn't anything that was helpful.
Dave, is the system capable of having hundreds of separate codes?
No,
Okay,
But we have talked about a system that does have separate codes and, you know, saw how expensive it would be. Plus, it would also take quite a bit of time for someone to maintain that, like to change the codes, keep track of all the codes, and then we would have to remind people of their individual codes or deal with it if it was a smartphone or a fob thing. But, you know, I don't know. I can't speak about the work part, but I was thinking that it might be an expense we might want to start to look at again for the individual codes.
agreed. All right, thank you. That's the end of the, I should also talk about we had our engineering committee meeting yesterday because the first was on a Wednesday. That means that the engineering committee and the board meeting are in the same week. And there has been progress made in the audio over IP project. And both Tom and Aaron have been working on that and report that we just have 2 pieces in there so far, but it was easier than they expected and faster than they expected. So Tom is, of course, very cautious and won't say anything about how that pretends well for an easy installation in the future. But I'll take that and say it indicates to me that it might be easier than we were worried about. So there have been discussions on email about how do we account for the money we're spending, but that the board doesn't need to be up to date on that, and that's an ongoing discussion. We could make the expenditures right now from money in the bank we have now, and so we're not spending money we don't have, is what I'm trying to say, to do that audio OP project. So since we do have other staff members here, Doug, is there anything you want to highlight in your report? Are you frozen, Doug?
No, not in particular.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's there
Okay.
for the reading.
Yep. Okay. That was the only action item that I saw in the reports. So Sue also had the same thing. So we only needed to do that once.
I have a question for Sybil, for something in her report, if I could ask.
Please go ahead.
Sybil, when you say another complaint about the host's political commentary on Mud Acres, was it the nature of the commentary or just that there was political commentary?
I'm trying to recall that particular one. Generally, it's the nature of the commentary. It's people who like bluegrass that are conservative. They don't hear anything negative about conservatives. But I could check about this particular one. Sometimes what they just say is that they should stick to music. And, I generally will, pass this on to hosts so they know, but I will say to them, extensive commentary that's not related to the music in any way is not appropriate. It's a music show. So, don't talk too much about anything.
Thanks.
I think that brings to an end our discussion of staff reports. Unless anybody has anything to mention or ask about in other staff reports. Is there any new business that people want to bring up? We do have a closed session discussion tonight. So before we get to that, are there any items to be added into new business? I'm not expecting it, but
Well, yeah,
go ahead, Stu.
think this is Marla's last board meeting. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Well, I think I expressed the sentiment of the board and by extension, the station, in expressing my great appreciation for the service you've provided. You've been a great board member. Your HR expertise has been much appreciated, has been very, very helpful. And I know I'm really sorry to see you go, but I understand, life issues that, are taking you away. But I just want to thank you for your service and, vaya con Dios.
Yeah, here.
Thank
Hey,
you, John.
Marla, you're
Yeah,
so
thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'll be around, so you can't shake me that easily. You're going to be stuck with me, just maybe in a different capacity. So thank you, Stu, and thanks everybody for being so supportive and helpful. And it's been great. It's been great getting to meet the volunteers and the staff, and as a listener sponsor, to really see where your money goes is really cool. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We now come to the closed session part of the meeting, which means people who are not members of the board need to leave the conference. And I will stop the recording while we are in. We're back.
I'll just say it again. Dave, the minutes should note that in closed session, the board heard a proposal from Staff Representative Holtz regarding salary adjustments and understands the executive committee will act on the matter in a timely manner.
Thank you. Any other issues to discuss by this board of directors? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn is in
Oh, wait a
order.
minute. Wait, Dave. I had,
Dean,
do we want to discuss the election format?
I don't think we need to do that as a board in this meeting. I think we can do that at the beginning of the annual meeting. So what I propose is that I work with you all to update the draft agenda for the annual meeting to incorporate your suggestions.
Okay, yeah, that was, I'm a member of the election committee. You want to, between now and the 26th, let's have a short meeting where we all get on the same page, because I think there are still a few questions to be answered by the process, and then we all in agreement as to how it's supposed to work.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, I'm cool. Move to adjourn then.
Motion.
Well, I'll second it. I was waiting for somebody else to, but you know.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Anybody want to keep going?
No.
Any abstentions? Thank you very much. The meeting
Good.
is adjourned.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good all.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.
So
Thank you, Marla.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Marla.
Yeah, Doug,
See-
thank you.
see y'all.
See ya.